about their investigation into the deaths of the actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa. They say he died from heart disease after his wife passed away from a rare infectious illness.
Another twist in the investigation into the tragic death of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy. Authorities sharing a new timeline, plus new details from the couple's wills.
Gene Hackman's autopsy report was supposed to bring clarity, but instead it raised even more questions.
That the autopsy confirms there are no signs of external traumatic injuries and there's no sign of foul play.
Joe Rogan just leaked that the details of the official cause of death doesn't add up, and he is backing it with evidence from the original autopsy report. Differences in the medical report, missing documents, and conflicting statements have made things even more suspicious. Some experts have pointed out unusual inconsistencies, while Rogan believes key information was deliberately withheld. Why were certain details left out?
Arakawa had a hantavirus, a rare virus linked to rodents, on February 11th, and Hackman from a cardiac event on February 18th, 7 days apart, worsened by advanced Alzheimer's and severe heart disease.
In this video, we will show you what Joe Rogan revealed about Gene Hackman's autopsy report.
I am fascinated by the mystery around Gene Hackman's death. It is a tragic, tragic death.
The death of Gene Hackman. The morning of February 26, 2025, started like any other in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The quiet town, known for its desert landscapes and art scene, had no idea that one of Hollywood's most respected actors had taken his last breath inside a house that now carried a dark secret. Gene Hackman, a name that had been part of cinema history for decades, was gone. But it wasn't just the fact that he had passed away. It was everything that came after. At exactly 11 a.m., emergency responders arrived at his estate, a $4 million property surrounded by tall trees and hidden away from the world. Hackman had spent his later years in seclusion, far from Hollywood, enjoying a life of privacy. But something about the scene inside his home didn't sit right. The way certain things were placed, the odd arrangement of furniture, and even the air inside the house all felt strange. Authorities arrived at the estate with a clear goal, which was to secure the property, investigate the circumstances surrounding his death, and determine if anything unusual had occurred. But from the moment they stepped inside, something felt off. There's a lot to reveal. Stay tuned to find out more. The house was too still. It wasn't just the absence of movement, it was the atmosphere. The air was thick, heavy, almost stale, as if the space hadn't been disturbed in a long time. The usual signs of a lived-in home were missing. No faint hum of appliances, no recently brewed coffee, no half-read newspaper left on the table. Instead, there was an eerie, almost staged quality to the scene. Then came the small but unmistakable irregularities. A chair slightly out of place, scuff marks on the floor, suggesting that something heavy had been moved recently. A thin layer of dust settled in areas that should have been frequently used. Hackman's personal belongings weren't where they should have been. His reading glasses, usually placed by his bedside or in the study, were instead found on a table in the hallway. A book he had reportedly been reading days before was missing entirely. Even more unsettling was the arrangement of furniture. Nothing was outright chaotic, but certain pieces appeared to have been shifted just enough to make it noticeable to those paying close attention. As the authorities conducted their sweep around Hackman's mansion, their focus turned to the library. It was one of the largest rooms in the house, lined from floor to ceiling with books, many of them rare and antique. But one section of the shelves stood out. Some of the books appeared slightly misaligned, not fitting neatly with the others. One particular row had a small but noticeable gap, as if a book had been removed and hastily returned or not returned at all. One officer moved closer, running his fingers along the wooden edges of the shelves. The texture felt different. Then with a slight push, something shifted. A dull creak echoed through the room as an entire section of the bookshelf swung open, revealing a hidden passage behind it. The air that rushed out was colder, untouched by the modern heating system of the house. The passage led downward to a spiral stone staircase, disappearing into the darkness. The walls were rough, unfinished stone, and dust swirled under the beams of their flashlights. This was no ordinary hidden room. This was something intentionally built, something meant to stay concealed. At the bottom of the staircase, they stepped into a large underground chamber, far larger than anyone had expected. This wasn't a small hidden space. This was an extensive, fully constructed subterranean area beneath Hackman's home. The walls were lined with wooden crates, stacked from floor to ceiling. Some were covered in dust and cobwebs. Others appeared as though they had been disturbed recently. A few had broken open, spilling their contents onto the stone floor. Inside the first crate they examined were stacks of old photographs. The images were yellowed, fragile, their edges curling from age. The faces captured in the pictures were unfamiliar, their clothing and hairstyles belonging to an era long past. Some photographs depicted secret meetings, groups of people gathered in dimly lit rooms. Others showed locations that did not match any known records. A few featured individuals whose names had been lost to history, their expressions frozen in time, their presence in these images raising more questions than answers. Beside the photographs were stacks of documents bound in cracked leather. The pages inside were darkened with age, covered in handwritten notes. Some sections were smudged, the ink blurred by time, while others remained perfectly legible. The records detailed events that had no official documentation, names that no longer appeared in any government files, and connections between people who, on paper, had no reason to be linked. Certain passages were hastily scribbled, as if written in urgency, and others contained references that hinted at something deliberately hidden, something meant to remain undiscovered. Then came the personal items. A vintage pocket watch with its hands frozen at an unknown hour. Delicate jewelry including necklaces, rings, brooches that looked as though they once belonged to someone of importance. But the most disturbing discovery was a small, tattered notebook, its pages filled with hurried, almost frantic handwriting. The notes inside were confessions, descriptions of events that, if true, suggested a web of secrecy spanning decades. As authorities continued searching the chamber, their flashlight beams swept across the walls. That's when they noticed something even more bizarre. Markings carved directly into the stone. The symbols didn't match any known language. Some resembled ancient alchemical signs, while others looked like technical schematics, blueprints for something beyond understanding. The designs were intricate, almost obsessive, as if someone had spent years etching them with precise intent. But then, the real discovery. Against the far wall, partially hidden by a collapsed stack of crates, was an old iron door. Unlike the wooden crates in aged papers, this door looked more severe. It was industrial and reinforced. Its surface was heavily rusted, stained from years of exposure to moisture. There was no handle, no visible keyhole, just a heavy, corroded lock, its metal so degraded it looked as though it hadn't been touched in decades. You're about to witness something truly shocking. Discoveries made in the secret tunnel. Authorities continued their investigation beneath Gene Hackman's estate, but the discoveries only raised more questions. The tunnel at the far end of the chamber stretched deeper than expected, its entrance framed by rough-hewn stone, as if it had been carved by hand rather than with modern tools. The air inside was thick with the scent of damp earth, and the walls bore markings that no one could immediately recognize. As they moved forward, their flashlights flickered over metal brackets lining the passage. Some rusted from age, others seemingly untouched by time. They weren't placed at random. Each one was spaced with precision, suggesting that this tunnel had been built with a specific purpose in mind. Further in, they stumbled upon something even more unusual. It was an old wooden crate, its lid partially open. Inside, investigators found objects that defied explanation. Among them were tools engraved with symbols that didn't match any known manufacturer. Some were simple in design, while others had mechanisms so intricate they seemed almost too advanced for the time period they appeared to come from. A few looked like surgical instruments, though not the kind used in any modern medical practice. Others resembled early scientific equipment, yet the craftsmanship suggested a level of precision far beyond what was available in Hackman's lifetime. Then came the journals. Leather-bound and worn with age, they were filled with pages of careful, deliberate handwriting. The text was in multiple languages, some readable, others written in the scripts that had yet to be deciphered. Some entries detailed observations of the natural world, notes on planetary movements, weather patterns, and magnetic fields, while others were more obscure, referencing names that didn't appear in any historical records. Certain passages hinted at meetings, transactions, and knowledge passed down through generations, all centering around something that had remained hidden for decades. At the far end of the tunnel, investigators found an iron door embedded into the rock. Unlike the rest of the tunnel, this door was reinforced with thick rivets and a locking mechanism that looked far more advanced than the age of the tunnel suggested. It had no visible handle or keyhole, only a circular indentation in the center. Attempts to open it were unsuccessful. The metal was too thick, and no amount of force seemed to budge it. What lay beyond the door remained a mystery, but the existence of the tunnel itself had already shifted the entire investigation. It was no longer just about the circumstances of Hackman's death. Now authorities were faced with something far bigger, something that pointed to a history far older than the actor himself. Meanwhile, the outside world was buzzing with speculation. Hackman's estate had always been known for its extreme privacy, but now every detail of its construction was being scrutinized. The mansion itself sat on a massive plot of land, surrounded by dense forest, with no direct roads leading in or out. The few staff members who had worked there over the years had always described it as being eerily quiet, with entire wings that remained unused. The estate's security system was another point of curiosity. The property was equipped with high-tech surveillance, motion sensors, and layers of reinforced barriers. Some reports suggested that Hackman had invested in technology typically used in military installations, though no one knew exactly why. His wealth certainly allowed for such precautions, but the level of protection seemed excessive for a simple private residence. Then there was the matter of Hackman's personal interests. While publicly known as a Hollywood legend, those close to him had occasionally hinted at his fascination with history, secret societies, and lost knowledge. He was known to collect rare artifacts, some of which had origins that were difficult to trace. His library was filled with texts that ranged from ancient philosophy to classified military documents, many of which were nearly impossible to acquire. As forensic teams analyzed the objects found in the underground chamber, they uncovered even more peculiarities. Some of the materials used in the tools and artifacts didn't match any known sources. Certain metals displayed properties that weren't typical of anything produced in modern industry. Even the wood from the crates appeared to come from a species of tree that wasn't native to the region, or in some cases, hadn't been recorded in botanical studies at all. The real breakthrough came when cryptographers began examining the symbols found in the tunnel. At first, they assumed it was a forgotten dialect or an old form of shorthand, but after cross-referencing with historical records, they realized that the markings bore similarities to multiple ancient languages, yet didn't align with any single one. Some were close to early alchemical symbols, while others matched designs found in lost manuscripts from centuries ago. Further digging into the history of the land revealed even more strange details. The original deeds for the property were incomplete, with large gaps in its documented ownership. Some records indicated that it had once belonged to a group that left behind no official trace, no listed members, no financial records, nothing. It was as if the land had changed hands multiple times without any clear transactions. Even more disturbing was the fact that similar tunnels had been found in other parts of the region, though most had been sealed off or destroyed over time. This suggested that what lay beneath Hackman's estate wasn't an isolated construction. It could be part of a much larger network, one that had existed long before he ever set foot on the property. As investigators continued their work, certain aspects of the case became classified. Authorities stopped releasing updates, and access to the estate was tightly restricted. Some of the researchers involved were reassigned, while others simply stopped speaking publicly about their findings. Online, theories spiraled out of control. Some believed Hackman had uncovered something tied to an ancient secret, while others speculated that the estate itself had been a front for something much larger. A few suggested that the hidden chamber had been used for secret experiments, while others were convinced it held evidence of forgotten technology. But the most pressing question remained unanswered. Who had constructed it, and why was it hidden beneath Hackman's estate? To answer this question, let's check out people who have lived in this estate before Hackman. The biggest reveal is yet to come. Keep watching. Tracking previous owners of the estate. Authorities are digging through old property records, trying to find out whether the builders or previous owners of Gene Hackman's estate knew about the hidden tunnel beneath it. Local historians and real estate experts are working to trace back every transaction involving the mansion. But so far, there is little to explain why such a complex underground structure exists. The deeper they dig, the stranger the stories become. Some longtime residents recall whispers of workers mysteriously disappearing while working on the estate, their fates never explained. Others believe the tunnel was once used for smuggling illegal liquor during Prohibition, allowing contraband to be moved without drawing attention. There is also speculation that it was built during the Cold War as a hidden escape route in case of emergencies. But as word of the tunnel spreads, so do the theories. Some believe Hackman himself may have hidden a secret fortune beneath his home. Inspired by his iconic roles in heist and mystery films, others suggest a much darker possibility that the tunnel was used for secretive, possibly illegal meetings involving powerful figures. Historians are now wondering whether the mansion sits atop an entire network of hidden tunnels beneath the city, and if so, what they were originally meant for. The timing of this discovery has only made the situation more suspicious. Hackman and his wife Betsy both died under circumstances that remain unexplained. Official reports barely scratch the surface, leaving behind more questions than answers. Now, with a secret tunnel directly under their home, investigators are wondering if this hidden passage could hold the key to solving the mystery of their deaths. Hackman's sudden and unexplained disappearance was already suspicious, but when paired with the scary details surrounding his death, the presence of this tunnel becomes even more mysterious. As forensic teams examine the tunnel, they uncover bizarre items that raise even more questions. Fragile, crumbling documents, old photographs of people whose identities are unknown, and strange artifacts that don't seem to fit anything from Hackman's well-documented public life are scattered throughout the space. The most unsettling discovery is the eerie symbols carved into the tunnel walls. These markings aren't random. They appear intentional, almost as if they are part of a coded message. Specialists in ancient languages and cryptography have been brought in to study them, with some experts suggesting they could be tied to secret societies or encrypted messages meant to guard powerful information. Some historians now believe the mansion itself may sit on ancient foundations, possibly linked to a long-forgotten underground system. That possibility has led to speculation about whether there are more tunnels hidden beneath other properties in the area. If that is the case, it could mean that an entire underground network has been hiding in plain sight. But the question remains, why did Hackman and his wife both die under such mysterious circumstances? Investigators are searching for any connection between the tunnel and their deaths, wondering if this hidden passageway played a role in their final moments. Hackman's story has taken an even stranger turn now that people who knew him best are starting to speak out. Neighbors and old friends are recalling strange conversations where Hackman spoke in riddles, hinting at unseen dangers and betrayals but never explaining them. Others remember shadowy figures slipping in and out of his estate at odd hours, their faces always hidden, their visits brief but frequent. His mansion was more than just a home, it was a fortress. High-tech security systems, reinforced steel doors, and now underground tunnels suggest a man who was deeply paranoid. Some neighbors even claim to have heard mechanical noises rumbling beneath the property late at night, almost as if something was being built or buried. As investigators continue their search, they are uncovering something even more bizarre. Hidden passageways crisscross beneath the mansion, leading to secret rooms filled with encrypted documents and artifacts that do not match any known civilization. The link between these tunnels and the strange, almost ritualistic deaths of Hackman and his wife is as baffling as ever. Some believe that a powerful secret society is involved, while others suspect a government cover-up. Every discovery seems like a breakthrough, only for it to unravel into even more unsettling questions. Authorities, however, remain silent. Their statements are vague and carefully worded, almost as if they are deliberately withholding the truth. The few details that have been made public only fuel further speculation. The authorities have combed through every inch of the tunnels beneath the mansion, using advanced technology to scan for hidden chambers and forgotten relics. But despite their exhaustive search, whatever they have found remains classified. What makes this even stranger is that historical records barely acknowledge the tunnels, almost as if someone intentionally erased any evidence of their existence. Locals have long whispered about eerie sightings on the property. Some claim to have seen shadowy figures sneaking in and out of the estate under the cover of darkness. Others report spotting unmarked black SUVs parked near the mansion in the dead of night, their engines stalling as if waiting for something or someone. Then there is the unsettling sound, a low mechanical hum coming from beneath the ground, as if some hidden machinery is still running deep within the tunnels. There are even more weird rumors, stories of people who ventured into the tunnels never to be seen again. Speculation that the mansion is tied to secret societies, covert government experiments, or a hidden chamber filled with lost relics of unimaginable power. Social media is filled with theories, ranging from the plausible to the terrifying. Some believe these tunnels lead to an underground bunker used by a secretive organization operating outside the law. Others think they are remnants of a classified military experiment so secretive that even today, it remains buried in mystery. Then there are those who take the theories even further, pointing to reports of electromagnetic disturbances and eerie, unexplained sounds. Whispers in the dark that hint at something not entirely human. Despite the growing list of theories, authorities refuse to reveal any significant findings. There is no confirmation, no denial, only silence. The longer they keep quiet, the deeper the mystery becomes. The public is left to connect the dots, but every new piece of information only raises more questions. The longer this investigation drags on, the more people suspect that there is something much bigger at play. Every discovery adds a new layer to the mystery, but none seem to bring anyone closer to a clear answer. As forensic teams sift through the wreckage, they come across a collection of old dust-covered phones with shattered screens. Some still contain encrypted messages, others hold unsent drafts frozen in time. Investigators believe these phones belong to key figures who vanished without a trace, leaving behind digital breadcrumbs that could expose a hidden network. They also find a battered leather-bound planner stuffed with hurried notes, cryptic symbols, and names scrawled in messy handwriting. Some of the dates overlap with significant unsolved events, leading investigators to suspect that the owner may have been documenting something far larger than just personal appointments. Even stranger, several of the listed locations do not exist on any known maps. Among the discoveries, investigators found small glass vials containing unknown substances. Some are sealed, while others appear to have been tampered with or emptied. Given the long-standing rumors surrounding the Hackman estate, whispers of secret experiments, missing persons, and unexplained financial transactions, authorities are now focusing on whether these substances are connected to any of those claims. Every detail is being examined. The ink in the notebooks, microscopic fibers on the pages, and partial fingerprints are all undergoing advanced forensic analysis. Spectral imaging and DNA testing are being used to detect anything that might have gone unnoticed. If these findings point to a specific name, the case could take an unexpected turn. Each new discovery adds another layer to the mystery surrounding the estate, but the biggest question still remains. Did any of it have anything to do with what happened to Gene Hackman? The final clue may be hidden in his surgery and autopsy report. Get ready for the most epic moment of the video: conspiracies surrounding his autopsy reports. Hackman had undergone surgery just weeks before his death. He had kept it private, not wanting the world to know that he had been dealing with health issues. The procedure was supposed to be routine, a corrective operation on his heart, something that many people his age went through. The surgery itself lasted hours, with doctors carefully navigating through delicate arteries and making sure everything was functioning properly. It had been a complicated process, requiring precise incisions and the placement of medical devices to ensure his heart would keep working as it should. After the procedure, he had been advised to rest, to take it easy, to avoid any kind of physical strain. But something had clearly gone wrong. The official cause of death was initially linked to complications from the surgery, but his body showed signs that didn't align with the official report. The skin, the muscle tissue, even the internal organs told a different story. His lungs showed unusual discoloration. His stomach contents were inconsistent with the timeline of his last known meal. There were small markings on his skin, almost unnoticeable at first, that raised even more questions. These weren't the typical signs of natural death, and the deeper the medical examiners went, the more confusing things became. The initial toxicology report only made things worse. There were traces of substances that shouldn't have been there. Some were common medications, nothing out of the ordinary for a man of his age, but others were harder to explain. There were compounds in his system that medical examiners struggled to identify. Some of them were completely untraceable in standard databases. The substances had no clear origin, and there was no documentation of them in his medical history. The presence of these unknown compounds made it impossible to determine how they had entered his system or why they had gone unnoticed. Then came the physical injuries. They weren't obvious at first, but under close examination, bruises and small abrasions were found in places that didn't make sense. His wrist showed faint pressure marks. His neck had subtle signs of strain that weren't immediately visible. His ribs had minor fractures that didn't appear to be recent, but there was no record of any fall or accident. The official report failed to include any mention of these injuries, leaving a gap between the documented findings and what the body revealed. As the pathologist continued, things only got more complicated. Hackman's brain showed signs of trauma. It wasn't the kind of damage that comes from a single blow, but something more gradual. There were areas with slight swelling, as if something had been affecting his neurological functions in the days or weeks before his death. His heart, though listed as healthy in previous medical records, showed unexpected signs of stress. His kidneys displayed unusual scarring. None of it fit the official story. The deeper they went, the stranger it got. His blood work was unlike anything they had seen before. There were abnormalities that couldn't be explained by age or any known medical condition. Some of the readings were inconsistent, fluctuating wildly in ways that didn't make sense. His red blood cell count was lower than expected. Certain enzymes were at levels that indicated severe stress, but there was no clear cause. And then there was the presence of something completely unidentifiable, a substance in his bloodstream that no standard test could classify. At this point, the medical team had more questions than answers. They needed to dig deeper. Tissue samples were sent for further analysis. Scans were done on every organ. His body was re-examined under different conditions, but every new test only made the case more confusing. Then came the biggest shock. During a secondary examination, something unexpected was found deep within Hackman's abdomen. A surgical scar, small and almost invisible, hidden in a way that suggested it had been done with extreme precision. There was no record of him having any procedure in that area, no history of surgery that matched what they found. And yet, when the tissue around the area was carefully examined, it became clear someone had operated on him. The incision wasn't fresh, but it wasn't decades old either. It looked like it had been done within the last few years, maybe even months. Whoever had performed it had done so in a way that left almost no external trace, but internally there were clear signs of tampering. Small foreign materials were detected near the site, microscopic fragments of something that wasn't part of the human body. More tests were ordered, high-resolution imaging, advanced microscopic analysis. But every new result made things worse. The fragments weren't metal, weren't plastic, weren't any material commonly used in medical procedures. They didn't match anything in standard surgical databases. As the pathologist tried to piece together what had happened, another detail stood out. His liver had signs of exposure to something unknown, a chemical or substance that had left subtle but noticeable traces. It wasn't a poison, at least not in the traditional sense, but it had altered his body in ways that weren't normal. Cells had been affected. Tissue showed signs of abnormal changes. It was as if something had been introduced into his system over time, affecting him in ways that were still unclear. What do you think they didn't want the public to see in the autopsy report? Let us know what you think in the comments section. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Click on the next video displayed on your screen. You will enjoy it.